Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elrom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held another lightning round of talks in Sochi with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Israeli premier stressed his nation will not accept a permanent Iranian presence in Syria or on the Golan Heights border with Israel. He also made it clear that Jerusalem will continue to take any action necessary to prevent the transfer of advanced game-changing weapons or capabilities sent overland from the hardline Islamic Republic to its terrorist proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon. This was Netanyahu's fourth visit to Russia in the last 16 months.
Meanwhile, Israeli television is reporting that Iran is now building a facility in northwest Syria to manufacture long-range rockets. Experts say that satellite images of construction at the site indicates the exact location of storage facilities for explosives. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to warn against Tehran's intention to fill the vacuum that's being left by the displacement of Islamic State terrorists in Syria. Jerusalem is carefully monitoring developments and will not hesitate to do whatever it takes to protect Israel's security.
Israeli missile boats returning from recent operational activity in the Red Sea passed clearly marked Pakistani warships. The vessels were among hundreds of other civilian and military ships that included the navies of Egypt and other Muslim nations. The Israeli boats routinely patrol the nearly 1,200-mile-long waterway to guarantee the safe passage of merchant ships en route to port cities in the Jewish state against terrorists hiding aboard Arab fishing boats or missiles being fired from shore. The Jewish sailors are also charged with thwarting any Iranian attempts to smuggle advanced weapons through Yemen by sea to the Hamas terror group in the Gaza Strip.
Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu joined other world leaders in condemning the deadly terror attack in Barcelona on behalf of all the citizens in the Jewish state. He also sent condolences to the families of the 14 fatalities and wished a speedy recovery to the more than 130 others that were injured in the vehicular assault, who included an Israeli woman in her 50s. Netanyahu then reiterated his call for the civilized world to unite in the fight against jihadist terrorism. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for the bloody massacre in Spain, as well as stabbings in Finland and Russia that are the latest to wreak carnage abroad.
In its coverage of the Barcelona attack, the Agence France-Presse news service included a list of other car ramming attacks that have been perpetrated since the devastating 2016 Bastille Day celebration in Nice, France. The AFP cited incidents in countries such as Germany, Sweden, and England, but completely omitted mention of similar atrocities in the State of Israel. There have been at least 3 clear cases in which Muslims deliberately used vehicles to target Jews just since the start of this year. The news agency is facing fierce criticism for refusing to acknowledge these incidents, particularly in light of how Palestinian-initiated terrorist methods, such as airplane hijackings and suicide bombings, are frequently used by copycat Muslim radicals in other parts of the world.
In fact, the Israeli Defense Ministry and the Jerusalem District Prosecutor's Office have jointly filed a precedent-setting civil lawsuit against the estate of Palestinian terrorist Fadi al-Kanbar. This is the Israeli Arab who was killed while murdering 4 young IDF soldiers on January 8th by deliberately ramming his truck into a group of cadets in the Israeli capital. The state is seeking financial damages of $572,000 on behalf of each victim in compensation for burial costs, the pain and suffering inflicted on the soldiers' families, as well as the loss of earnings and pension benefits. This is the first suit of its type to be filed, although more are expected in the future. Israel's Interior Minister called the proceedings the beginning of a new era against terrorism, adding that from now on, anyone who plots, plans, or considers carrying out a terrorist attack will know that his family will pay a heavy price for his deed.
Following last month's savage attack on the Solomon family in Halamish by an Arab murderer, the Israeli Dog Unit is urging residents living in Judea and Samaria to join the Canine Defense Program to help prevent terrorist infiltrations into their communities. The IDU provides security dogs to Jews who seek to protect their families and villages using specially trained canines. The commander of the Israel Dog Unit says vulnerable Jewish settlements should be patrolling their borders with dogs that can detect suspicious movement before the terrorist sneaks through the security fence. He also stressed that a protection dog inside the house can help neutralize a terrorist before he carries out his carnage. He He emphasized that point by telling of the incident that occurred earlier this year when a terrorist armed with 2 knives entered a home in the Mount Hebron region. The intruder was immediately attacked by the family dog, allowing the homeowner enough time to grab his gun and shoot the terrorist dead.
Turning to Israel's latest medical developments, and a new standard of hope for rapid healing has just been set when semi-liquid live human tissue was injected into the arm of a 40-year-old man to replace bone loss caused by a car accident. The laboratory-created graft was developed from stem cells taken from the patient's own body fat. This remarkable groundbreaking tissue engineering technology is the brainchild of the Bonus Bio Group in Haifa. It takes only about 2 weeks for the extracted cells to multiply into the amount that's needed to fill the bone gaps that have been left by injury, illness, or even medical procedures, such as the removal of cancerous tumors. The Israeli injectable bone graft technique heralds a major breakthrough over traditional procedures that generally require a long recovery process after complicated surgery and often fail because the patient's bodies reject implants from foreign donors.
An Israeli crowdfunding campaign has reached its goal of gathering 1 million shekels, or about $300,000, for a policewoman who was paralyzed by a Palestinian terrorist in Jerusalem last year. The money will be combined with funds allocated by the Defense Ministry toward the purchase of a new home equipped to meet the medical needs of 38-year-old Tzipi Yakovian. The married mother of 2 has been wheelchair-bound since the knife wielded by a Palestinian assailant pierced her spinal cord during the September 2016 attack near Herod's Gate leading into the Old City. Organizers of the public donation campaign said that once again, the people of Israel are proving the power of unity by standing together to ensure no wounded person is ever left behind in the field.
When disaster struck Sierra Leone this past week, the Jewish state was the first foreign nation to arrive with help. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu ordered the shipment of emergency aid immediately after an estimated 500 people were killed in the massive August 14th flooding and mudslides. Over 20,000 food packs were delivered within the first 24 hours. And now Israel is sending medicine, clean water, blankets, and other desperately needed assistance. Jerusalem's envoy to Freetown, Ambassador Paul Hirschzone, told Israel Now News that Israel's rapid response gave hope to the survivors by showing that the Jewish state stands by its friends not only in good times when it's easy, but also during their most difficult moments. Sierra Leone is one of the 15 countries that make up the Economic Community of West African States. That group made history this past June for inviting Israel's premier to become the first non-African head of government to ever address its summit in Liberia. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein and we're here in our studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Job Spittner. He's the president of March of Life. Job, thanks for being on the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Job, tell our viewers a little bit about what is March of Life.
So the March of Life starts 10 years ago and it stands for remembering, reconciliation and also making a statement of friendship to Israel. And so it has something to do with our town. So I'm coming from Tübingen. Tübingen is a university town and it has a great meaning, worldwide meaning, but it has also a dark history. So in Tübingen there were trained SS Einsatzgruppen and had leaders from SS Einsatzgruppen, and they were responsible for the death of 700,000 Jews. And out of this, we started to research our family history and we started to talk about our families. It's so important. And so our families, our grandfathers and fathers, they were Nazis and they had been involved directly or indirectly in the Holocaust. And out of this, the March of Life started 2007. And so 10 years ago, and we decided to go on the way of the death marches. You know, around Tübingen there were concentration camps, and these concentration camps were liquidated in the end of World War II. And so 250,000 people died on the death marches, and we decided to walk directly on along this way. And so that was the beginning. And so we thought about it, and someone at a point, someone talked to us, someone called me, and it was a Holocaust survivor, and she asked, can we be with you? And we said, okay, yes, sure. And so she came with 30 descendants of Holocaust survivors. And so we were together. We walked on this route of the Death March, descendants of Nazi perpetrators and also descendants of Holocaust survivors. And that was a special time of reconciliation. And so we reached the Memorial Dachau, and they prayed the Kaddish, and they asked us to hold the pictures of their families, and it was a very movement situation. And out of this, the March of Life started, and now with 300 people, and until now we have been in 370 cities and 18 nations.
So, you know, it's amazing what you're planning to do next. And one of the things that I really like about the movement is that it's not just remembrance, it's also clear support for the state of Israel. And now you're planning to bring all the people who were involved in all the marches in Europe, in America, in South America, all here next year for the 70th anniversary of the state of Israel. What is the idea behind that movement, that concept?
Yeah, so 1 year ago, I got the idea, what's about bringing all the people from all the nations to Israel. And I mean, this is such a special day, this 70th anniversary of Israel, and I think it's a special blessing not only for Israel, it's a special blessing also for the nations to stand together with Israel and to say, Israel, we love you, we are standing with you, make a stand for you. And so, you know, in Isaiah 2 and Micah 4, you know the words, come, let us go up to Zion. And so what would happen if all the nations would come to Jerusalem and this special day of the 13th to the 15th of 2080 to Jerusalem? And so we will start with a conference, and then on exactly this date, the 50th of 2080 in Jerusalem, we will have this March of the Nations from Gan Sacher. It's in the area, so in the area of the Knesset. And from there, through the heart of Jerusalem to the Mount Zion. And we will have there a wonderful big event in Sultanspur. And so I think it will not be only a blessing, it will be a wonderful time. And it would be so great to have everyone there.
Yops, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
So what I say is, we are living in a special time, and God is a God of miracle, and I think Israel is the biggest miracle. So be a part. You are not only invited. Please be a part of this March of the Nation, because it's a common voice and a common proclamation in this special time for Israel, and I think it will be also a special blessing for your nation, and will open the heavens for the nations. And so be invited and be a part of it.
Jobs, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Keren Hayesod.
Shalom and welcome to the Return to Zion with Keren Hayesod. I'm Eliezer Moody Sandberg, World Chairman of Keren Hayesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. through the work of Keren HaYesod, we believe that in the next 5 years, there will be more Jews in the state of Israel than all the Jews outside of Israel combined. Join us on this historic mission.
In just a few short years from now, for the first time since the destruction of the Second Temple, more Jews will once again be living in Israel than in the rest of the world combined. This incredible milestone is a testament to the truth of God's prophecy, the determination of the Jewish people, and the hard work of Keren HaYesod, which for the past 90 years has dedicated itself to returning the Jewish people home. After the Roman army ransacked Jerusalem in 70 AD, the Jewish nation was scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. But each generation kept faith and dreamed of returning to their ancient home. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget her skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you. Over the centuries, a tiny remnant of Jews constantly remained. By 1800, just 24,000 lived in their homeland, while untold millions built Jewish lives across the globe. Throughout the following 2 centuries, the ingathering of the Jewish people gradually became reality. In the land of Abraham and of King David's ancient kingdom, the Jewish people finally fulfilled Jeremiah's prophecy. There is hope for your future. Your children will return to their borders. The first wave of Jews arrived in the late 19th century, mainly from Russia and Yemen, pioneering some of modern Israel's most familiar cities. Soon before the First World War, they were joined by Jews fleeing the pogroms of Tsarist Russia. They founded the very first kibbutz and revived the ancient biblical language as modern Hebrew. During the 1920s, as Europe was reshaped in the aftermath of war, Jews continued to find refuge in the Holy Land, fleeing from growing anti-Semitism. Crucial to these efforts was the work of Keren HaYesod supporters, who had galvanized Jewish communities and their friends across the world in an effort to see Jews return home. This was critical in helping hundreds of thousands of Jews escape the dark clouds of Europe as the horrors of Nazi Germany became a reality. By the outbreak of World War II, the Jewish population of Israel had swelled to 250,000. This number swiftly grew during the late 1940s as the survivors of humanity's darkest hour headed to the only place they could call home. As the world reeled from the shock of Nazism, Jews were forced to flee persecution once more, this time from the Middle East and North Africa, with around 900,000 Jews expelled or forcibly removed from Arab countries between 1948 and 1970. They arrived destitute in the fledgling state of Israel, eventually playing a major role in its development. Israel has continued determinedly to rescue Jews from danger. Tens of thousands of Ethiopian Jews were airlifted to safety in the 1980s and early 1990s. In the following years, as the Soviet Union collapsed, almost 1 million Jews made the journey to Israel. With the help of Keren HaYesod supporters, they have made new lives in the land of their forefathers. 2 millennia after the Roman destruction, we believe more Jews will soon once again be living in Israel than outside of Israel. They will be living in a thriving, independent Jewish state. Finally, as Zechariah predicted, old men and women will sit in the streets of Jerusalem, filled with boys and girls playing. Join us in making this dream a reality. Bible-believing Christians around the world have a role to play in the fulfillment of this biblical prophecy. Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I will lift up my hand to the nations and set up my standard to the peoples, and they will bring your sons in their arms, and your daughters will be carried on their shoulders.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
Nearly 40 years ago, I made the best decision of my life. I left a rather comfortable middle-class existence in the United States, and I filled up the backpack with the entirety of my belongings, and I moved to the State of Israel. State of Israel that was far less developed and technological than it is today. To make a phone call to the United States back then took about a month and cost about $100 per minute. A little tougher, but the best decision I ever made in my life. By linking my fate and fortunes to the State of Israel, I was reenacting the most original Jewish commitment. It begins in the Bible when God says to Abraham, take yourself, lech lecha, to a land that I will show you. The Jewish story begins with Abraham making Aliyah, going up to the State of Israel, as we say. Aliyah means, of course, going up, and we ascend to the land of Israel. Coming to this country, enabled to fulfill my identity as a Jew, to become a part of the Jewish people in the way that I could not do it outside of this country, for it is only in this country that Jews can can assume responsibility for themselves as Jews in every aspect of their life. Here alone, Jews are responsibility for the electricity, for the sewage, of course, for our defense and foreign policy. We are responsible here. Making Aliyah is the essence of Zionism. And Zionism can be defined by one word: responsibility. Making Aliyah, moving here, is assuming responsibility for ourselves as Jews, for our defense, for our prosperity, for our families, and for our future. Make Aliyah is making the most important, and I believe, most valued decision of your life.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Once in a lifetime, there comes a moment that not only changes a nation, it changes the world. It was the realization of a 2,000-year-old dream that altered the course of history. During the turmoil of the Six-Day War, an opportunity emerged to reunify the single most important city in the world. And on June 7, 1967, the dream became a reality.
השעה 10:20, 7 ביוני, ברגע זה אנו עוברים את שער האריות. הר הבית בימינו, כאן תגיד, הר הבית בימינו.
The Feast of Tabernacles 2017 marks 50 years since a divided city became united again.
You don't want to miss this historic and prophetic opportunity to celebrate with us 50 years of a reunited Jerusalem. Come to Jerusalem on the 6th to the 11th of October 2017 and celebrate with us the Feast of Tabernacles right here in the city of God.
Register today at feast.icej.org to receive an early bird discount.
The Feast of Tabernacles, presented by the ICEJ, unites the world in a celebration of God and His promises for Israel. This work would not be possible without the help of our amazing volunteers who have their own story to tell about God's faithfulness in their lives.
My name is Victoria. I come from the Philippines. I first heard of ICEJ from a friend of mine from church who came here as a volunteer last year. I went into ICEJ.org and went into the website. I was just reading around and I was looking at all the efforts, the Isaiah 62 prayer. So I signed up for that. And then I saw the Aliyah projects. So I said, okay, I don't have a lot, but I will give what I have. And I said, anyway, Lord, I know no one can outgive you. So I'll just do this even if I could not afford it.
Victoria stepped out in faith and became a financial and prayer partner with the ICEJ.
When you partner with ICEJ, on Christmas, they will send you a card. And on that card was the Wailing Wall with the stars. When I first got it, I said, wow, it's the wall. I'm gonna go there by faith.
As her passion for Israel grew, she felt the call to come to Israel to volunteer at the Feast of Tabernacles.
When the registration opened for the volunteers, I was the first. I signed up right away and I absolutely had no money. But I said, never mind, by faith, Jesus will provide.
And by faith, Victoria made it to Jerusalem as a volunteer with the ICEJ.
I cannot say how much it has blessed my life. God just paved the way for me to be here. Not only the monetary provision, but the time to take off from work. Everything is just in place. And I said, Lord, thank you for just opening all the doors. A group of us went to the wall, and I was just thinking, it looks the same, just like the picture. Normally, you would want to just ask for everything, but at that moment, I could not ask. I guess I just wanted to enjoy the presence, just feel God's love from just looking at a picture, and then now it's reality. It's like I could not believe that I was there, and I could not believe I walked 10,000 steps to get there. I always, even before I left, I share with the church that I want to come back next year. Before I left, I said, all of you, you have the desire to come, because when you do desire, God provides.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.